Hey, I'm Zane Gonzalez. You're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from downtown Phoenix, this is Season 2, Episode 7 of the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week are college football analyst Josh Schaefer and Lyle Goldstein, with our executive producer Brady Klain, and I am your host for the evening, just like I am every week, at Lyle Goldstein. Blake Harris. Gentlemen, how are we on this lovely evening?
Yeah, it's nice. Once again, we are in a fabulous studio here in downtown Phoenix, and it was really, for me, not a very hype weekend of college football. Didn't feel like a college football weekend. I think that's partially because one of my teams played on a Friday, which is dumb. But all in all, there were some pretty darn good games this weekend.
Yeah, another good week of college football. It's always one of the highlights of my week to be doing this with you guys, so I'm ready to get going.
Hey, as long as I'm here with you guys, I'm happy.
As always, this week's episode is presented by SeatGeek. Head on over to SeatGeek.com and enter the promo code Harris Highlights, and you'll get $20 off your first order. And guys, I hate to announce it, but our Pro Football Focus giveaway has officially come to an end. It is, it's October 2nd now. Yesterday was October 1st. Currently still going through all the replies, seeing who's going to be the lucky winner. We'll have that to you guys next week. But guys, first things first, the new AP poll came out, and it's very, very, very unique. A lot of interesting placements here, so a lot to talk about. But the first thing I want to start off with, that's Georgia moving up all the way to 5. They beat Tennessee 41-0 in a game in which I think Butch Jones should be fired, but I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the Q&A. But guys, Georgia's now sitting at 5. We've been high on them the last few weeks, but all of a sudden now, they're moving up, and it looks like they are here to stay.
I mean, I don't think there's much anything new to say with these guys. We've talked about it over the last few weeks. A legit defense, 2 really good running backs. We've seen some real signs of promise out of Jake Fromm, and he continues to improve and develop every week. And they pummeled Tennessee. It was an absolute blowout, so I have no problem with moving Georgia up 2 spots. And like I said, I think they're going to easily run away with the SEC East.
I'm putting, so I know the AP poll has it this way, but the coaches poll actually has UW and Georgia flipped. So UW's at 5 and Georgia's at 6. Of course, we're looking at the AP poll, and in that case, I totally agree. I think Georgia deserves to be in the top 5. I think they deserve to be in the top 4. I just don't know who I would bump out. But honestly, I think we saw Eason go down, and he didn't even play against Notre Dame, in which we thought, we were like, wow, Notre Dame lost to a backup quarterback. But Fromm's the real deal. Fromm is, Jake from State Fromm. I love this guy. He's got the best Twitter handle out of any college football quarterback that I've seen. I just like his game. The dude's a baller, and I like that.
I'll tell you this, and I said this week 1, and I said it the week after, and the week after, and the week after, and the week after, and now. Number 8, that's TCU. Where'd they start at the beginning of the year? Unranked. Where'd I have them finishing the end of the year? I said top 10 or so. Let's go TCU, Horned Frogs.
I feel like you have a lot of things to tell us every week. You know.
Well, you know what, Lyle?
I'll tell you this.
Blake's our host each week, and he has to still tell everybody, so,
that's true.
Come on.
Yeah, so, we got TCU, they hopped up a spot. That's pretty good when you can hop up and you don't even lose or play a game, so that's good. A lot of teams pretty much essentially moved up. Now here we go in the top, I thought they were going to crack the top 10, and that's Wazoo at 11. They only hopped up 5 spots after beating a number 5 ranked USC by 3 points in what was a Friday night matchup, which Josh mentioned he hates, which I personally hate as well. Save college football for Saturday. But I was very surprised with this one. I thought Wazoo was going to go to at least like 9 or so, but seeing them only move up 5 spots, not even cracking the top 10, I found that intriguing. Guys, what are your thoughts on Wazoo sitting there at 11?
I think what kept them out of the top 10 is, if we're just being honest, they didn't play a great game, and neither did USC. The game itself was exciting. The first half, it was just a weird game. It was an interesting game. The momentum swings were heavy I mean, going back and forth constantly. It was just a strange game. I wasn't watching it. I was calling a game myself, but I was getting updates and I was watching the Gamecast live. And then pretty much every time out during my game, I would put it on the radio and I would listen to it. And before I watched the rest of the third and the fourth quarter, so I missed the entire first half. But from what it seems like, and then from going back and watching the game, it just doesn't seem like Washington State played a complete football game. They were able to get the win, which is what I think is keeping them out of the top 10. I'd have them at either 10 or 11 myself, but I still think they have a lot of room to grow. And this week, I think they match up very well with Oregon. That game's coming up soon. So I think if they beat Oregon and they do it convincingly, with their defense really stepping up, then I think that pushes them into the top 10, regardless of what the 10 teams in front of them do.
I mean, we can dive into the details about how Wazoo played, how USC played, but the bottom line, a win is a win. Wazoo did beat a very, very good USC team, an in-conference win. So when you look at it, you look down at some of the teams, Washington, Michigan, even Wisconsin. Well, they haven't really beaten anybody very good. And then you look at Ohio State, who already has one loss. I'm not saying move Wazoo up to 4 or 5, but I think they could at least be around 8. There's some teams I think they have some better wins than. And the AP poll seems to really like to go off big wins and like to jump teams pretty high up the poll based off that. So if I were the AP poll, I would put Wazoo at about 7 or 8.
I want to hop back into Washington State now. I would only put them at 9 because I feel a win over USC is more appealing than a win over Rutgers. And then Wisconsin's close win over, Northwestern. So I feel like 9 should have been the perfect spot for Wazoo. But USC really quickly I want to talk about. So they were at 5. I thought they were probably going to slip maybe 6 or 7 spots. They slip all the way to 14. At first I had a problem with that, but the more I look at it, you have Miami at 13, who just went to Duke, beat a team that was undefeated by 25. And then at 12, you got an Auburn team that just beat a number 24 Mississippi State team, a team that I was very high on, and now I'm looking more idiotic as the weeks go by. They beat them by nearly 40 points. And then, like I mentioned, you got the Wazoo, Ohio State. So I feel like USC is 14 is actually the right spot. But here's one that I don't understand, guys, and that's Virginia Tech at 16. They only fell 4 spots. Now, granted, they did lose to Clemson, who's arguably one of the best teams, but they lost at home by 2 touchdowns, and they fall only 4 spots. Meanwhile, you got a team like USC, who loses on the road by 3 in the final minute, who falls 9 spots. So Virginia Tech, I do think they are a good team, but they looked awful in that game. The only reason they lost by 14 points was because of just a little late fourth quarter push, but they were out of it from essentially the very beginning, and I don't think they deserve to be sitting there at 16. Because if you look at the teams behind them really quickly, you got Louisville at 17. Well, they had a nice win against Murray State. Then you got South Florida behind them, a nice convincing win against East Carolina. San Diego State, they squeaked one out against Northern Illinois. Then you got Utah, who didn't play. You got Florida, who beat Vanderbilt by 2 touchdowns. And obviously, as you guys know, Vanderbilt is not the team that I thought they were. I'm 0 for 2 on that one. Oh, look at Notre Dame, a very convincing win against Miami. Ohio by about 35. West Virginia didn't play. NC State squeaked by Syracuse. So rounding out the top 25, there were really no convincing wins. So I actually think Virginia Tech there at 16 is a good spot. But looking at the rest of the list, I do notice we do have South Florida, San Diego State, 18-19. Those are some surprising teams. Maybe we could see them crack the top 10. Notre Dame coming in at 22, Lyle. They're making their push.
And they're tied for 21st.
Or yeah,
look hard at that AP poll. There's no
tied.
22.
Which is, I think, is stupid. Don't have a tie. Just make it a ranking.
It's dumb.
And then we got West Virginia. We got 23. And then we got NC State and UCF, University of Central Florida, cracking the top 25. They're 3-0. How about that? But guys, I want to touch upon this right now. LSU, they were ranked 25th. They lost to Troy at home. Now, granted, Troy, coming into the year, when we were making our non-Power 5 predictions, I said Troy was only going to have 1 loss, that being against LSU. Well, they just won. They beat the Tigers. So this Troy team is for real, but what do you guys make of the game?
The game, yes, it was in favor of Troy almost the entire time, but my favorite thing and the best story I took away from this was, you saw this at the beginning of the season, you see this a lot happen, but this is one of those teams, Troy's one of those teams that's not in conference, that's not anywhere, it's just a fluff game. LSU paid them $1 million to come play. So not only did Troy win, they also banked $1 million out of that.
Well,
On homecoming at LSU.
Well, thank you, Darren Ravel. Brady's always got those great stats for us. I appreciate it,
well,
Brady.
Brady had an interesting stat today. I don't know if he has. He can probably get it up in our group chat. But it was something comparing Ed Orgeron's career record as an interim coach and as a head coach.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So Ed Orgeron, His record as a full-time head coach, he's 13-29. As an interim coach, he's 12-4.
That's crazy. That really is.
Very interesting stat.
Well, if you want my 2 cents on this game, I always just marvel at the fact that for as good of a program as LSU usually is, they always seem to struggle to find a really good quarterback and to produce a really good quarterback. Danny Etling, I'm sorry, they got to find a replacement for him. Like, I hate to harp on the guy. I know, like any college athlete, he's trying his best, but he's simply not producing for LSU. This happened last year too. His inefficiency to throw the ball downfield is a huge problem. But the biggest factor in this game, I would say, you guys ever heard of some guy named Darius Geis?
Sounds familiar.
Who?
Well, he didn't play. I know Troy is a few notches below LSU in terms of quality and talent, but your best player is not playing. Guy who came into the season being a Heisman Trophy, contender, weeks 1 and 2 or so. I know he hasn't played great, but the fact is he didn't play. He is the center of that team, and when you don't have your best player, you're not going to play well.
Yeah, just writing out this top 25, Troy did receive a top 25 vote. Oregon just is right on the outskirts. Florida State, they're 1 win away from getting back in it, but I don't know about Florida State. They're putting them at 27. They needed a last-second touchdown to beat Wake Forest, and naturally Wake Forest was undefeated. I did pick them last week to win, but Florida State looked awful in that game. They were trailing for a good amount, so I don't know about putting them at 27. You got Texas Tech. So from ASU's losses perspective, they're not looking so bad. You got San Diego State loss, who they're at 19, and you got Texas Tech, who almost upset Oklahoma State, and then you got Stanford here receiving votes, and we'll talk about Stanford a little bit later in the show, but just rounding them out, we got Navy, Kansas State, Memphis, Texas A&M, and good old Maryland there with 1 point. But we're going to switch things up a bit, talk a little about the games. First things first, let's talk about that Clemson-Virginia Tech game. A lot of hype was going into this game. One of the best entrances, I believe, in college football, the Enter Sandman.
What's even better is that they have Metallica play a video on the Jumbotron. It's like, Virginia Tech, it's time to get going. It's so intense. It's so cool.
One of our viewers who we had on last week, he sent in a video. He was at the game, so right now we're going to put that little clip of the introductions. But yeah, definitely one of the best introductions all there in sports. But guys, Clemson once again beating a top 25 team, and they looked really good. Virginia Tech. So guys, I don't know how much of the game you watched, but what were your few takeaways that you had?
Well, kind of like I mentioned a few minutes ago when we were looking at the AP poll, was, coming into this season, I know me personally, I wasn't expecting a whole lot from Clemson. I thought they were going to be contenders, kind of like how Auburn has been the last few years. Like, they competed in a national championship, and a couple national championships, and then since then they've kind of just been around. They've been to some big bowl games, but they haven't been in the top 4 talk. Is that safe to say? Well, I kind of had this feeling that Clemson was still going to be a good team, going to be around, but not making shockwaves across college football. And I was wrong. These guys are the real deal. I think they're just as good as they were last year, actually.
I think they're better than last year.
Yeah, and they're making a case to be the number 1 team. The only thing that's unfortunate for them is, although Alabama is killing everyone that they've been playing, they haven't had a whole lot of outstanding competition. But when you beat an in-conference, an SEC conference opponent, 66-3, you're the number 1 team in the country. You're the number 1 team, because Ole Miss is not a bad football team. They are okay. So there's no reason for Alabama not to be number 1, but Clemson, I think they're the real deal.
I just think the AP poll does it in the sense that Bama's going to be number 1 until somebody really proves otherwise that they're deserving, a.k.a. Bama's going to have to lose. But looking at the game, I kind of had a feeling going into this one that Clemson was going to pull away. I think Virginia Tech's a solid team. I think they're one of the better teams in the ACC. But Clemson is just so much farther above everybody else. That defense is superb. They have a few first-rounders on that defense, specifically the front 7. And then you look at Kelly Bryant. Yeah, he didn't have an amazing game. Only threw for 186 yards. He did rush for almost 100. He looks like a first-year starter in the sense that he's still adjusting. to the D1 like play, to the ACC competition. He's struggling a little bit at times to throw the ball downfield, and his passing efficiency is off and on. But as time goes on, it's only going to get better. And like I said, it was a very good Virginia Tech defense that he was facing, and he found a way to get the win. So Clemson, like Josh said, they're competing for that number 1 spot right now. They're sitting comfy at number 2, and we'll see what they do the rest of the way.
All right, moving on. Another very relevant game. We'll touch upon this for a few minutes, and that is USC Wazoo. Wazoo did get the win at home. One of the probably best wins in the program's at least recent history. That's for darn sure. But guys, they beat USC by 3. Josh mentioned just overall it was a very ugly game. Both teams didn't look that good. But yeah, Wazoo wins by 3. So I guess I'm going to say, what does this mean for Wazoo, and more importantly, what does this mean for USC?
For Wazoo, it's big because now it gives them. I mean, I think a lot of people were expecting them to have 1 loss at this point, maybe even 2. But now coming in, looking at the rest of their schedule, they've got a few tough games. There are some pretty good offenses in the Pac-12 North, especially this week playing against Oregon. However, they might roll over Oregon now without Royce Freeman and Justin Herbert. But now that Apple Cup game is circled on my schedule. It's circled on the entire state of Washington's schedule if it wasn't already. But that's going to be a huge game. For USC, here's the thing with USC. Like I said a few minutes ago, if they have an offensive resurgence against Oregon State, I think they'll be fine. My immediate reaction after the game was a little bit more harsh than it should have been. I told Blake I'm going to drop SC down to 17. Now, I think 14 is fair, maybe even 12. Looking at the rest of their schedule, I told Blake they're going to lose to UW. I think I bet Lyle that they're going to lose in South Bend against Notre Dame. Bottom line, USC is, I think they're still fine. We've seen 5 weeks of college football. The offense has been dead since they played Texas. Defense, I think, is fine. They just need to figure it out offensively. And once they figure it out offensively, once they get healthy again, they're still one of the top 10 teams in the country, in my opinion. I think at full strength, they are top 10, potentially top 5, like we saw the first few weeks. The offensive line has been a struggle. If they get healthy and if they stay healthy and if Darnold starts making a few better decisions, they're a top 5 team.
Well, the good thing is they are going to have plenty of time to jump back into it. They still got to play Utah, who's ranked 20th, and they have a game which this is the first time in a few years where I've been excited for the Notre Dame game, because it seems like for the last 5 or 6 years or so, one team has been dominant, the other team has been okay. This is the first time in a while where both teams, coming into the year, I was thinking Notre Dame going to be an easy win. I don't know now. I know Lyle is very high on Notre Dame now, but I'm very scared looking at this Notre Dame game, and I think that potentially, because it's the end of October?
October 28th.
So it's the end of October. So by that time, if these two teams...
21st, I'm sorry. 21st.
ASU's the 28th.
If these two teams win out, that can be like a top 15 or so matchup between the two teams, which can leapfrog Notre Dame into the top 10 or leapfrog SC into the top 10.
Well, what this game against Wazoo just did is it made that Notre Dame USC game even more important than it already was, because by the end of that game, somebody's going to be out of playoff contention between the two teams, because they now have 1 loss. They're 2 teams both competing for a playoff spot, and I think it's going to be a dogfight like USC Notre Dame often is, especially in South Bend. But I'm looking forward to that game. It's definitely circled on my calendar. I know you two are looking forward to it as well.
Really quickly, just writing out the end of these games, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. That was a darn good game. Texas Tech, I think they are a legitimate good team this year. They did receive AP Top 25 votes, but Oklahoma State almost losing back-to-back weeks. That would have just killed any playoff chances they had and Mason Rudolph's Heisman hopes, but he looked good, but that was almost a potential upset watch. But really quickly now, let's go into our top 4. Now, I feel like this is going to be fun. I think it was last week's show we told what our top 4 playoff teams are. Obviously, some things have changed now. But guys, going down the list, let's hear your top 4 teams at the moment.
At the moment. Well, I'm going with... You know what? I'm making a game time decision. Number 1, I've got Bama. Number 2, I've got Clemson. Number 3, I've got Oklahoma. And number 4, sorry, Penn State, I'm going Georgia.
I think Bama at number 1 and Clemson at number 2 are pretty much a slam dunk. They've proved that they're the 2 best teams in the country. I'll have Penn State at 3. Been really impressed with what they've done. And I'm going to have Georgia at 4. I know Oklahoma beat Ohio State, but I'm just not convinced that come the end of the season, they're going to be a top 4 quality team.
I'm going to throw Alabama at 1, Clemson at 2. Those 2 are pretty much given throughout everybody. Penn State up to 3 just because they've played 5 games, but I'm going to bump Oklahoma to 4 because they've played 4. I think Penn State and Oklahoma are right on that tier, but since Penn State has played 1 more game, I give them the edge.
I think I know why Brady has Penn State at 3, because they just had a great win against IU, the Hoosiers, so maybe next year Brady. But guys, my top 4 is going to shock you guys. It's going to shock everyone else.
UC Davis at number 1.
No, but hey, go Aggies. At number 1, I'm going to put Clemson, and this is why. They have wins against number 16 Virginia Tech, number 17 Louisville, and number 12 Auburn. They easily have the most impressive resume in the entire country, and they have looked good in every game they've played, so I'm going to give them the edge. Alabama at 2 because they are Alabama. The teams they're playing aren't that good, but as Josh mentioned, when you beat an SEC team, especially one like Ole Miss, 66-3, which I believe is the most points in the Nick Saban era, that can't go unnoticed. At my 3, I'm going to go with Georgia. Mainly because, 1, I think maybe you can make the debate between them and Clemson. Georgia has one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the country, and they have some good wins. They do have a win against Notre Dame, which now that 1-point win, that's looking like a great win for Georgia, especially in South Bend. Also, they beat Tennessee 41-0 at Tennessee. I forget what the stat was, but that was like the largest shutout in Tennessee since like the early 90s or so. So that doesn't happen. So Georgia, I'm going to put them at 3. And at 4, I hate to do this to Oklahoma, but I'm going to put Penn State at 4. As Brady mentioned, they do have the edge playing that 5th game. They have looked good in their games, but Oklahoma, I feel like that's going to be a little quick battle right there. But that's my top 4. But as we've seen, guys, it changes every week. But I think 2 weeks ago, about 3 of us had Oklahoma State in the top 4, and now we got Georgia coming in out of nowhere. We got Clemson at 1. That just goes to show that every week something different can change. But guys, really quickly as well, switching things up, some Heisman talk. I know we all probably have the same favorite for the Heisman, as we all should, but let's hear some other names that you guys have that can maybe make a run for it, some sleepers that can make a late season push, maybe some players who you had originally in it that currently aren't in it anymore.
I got 2 people in the Heisman running right now, and that's it. I've got Saquon Barkley. That's a given. And I've got Bryce Love. Now, even before this Arizona State game, Bryce Love should have been in the Heisman talks. And I think that the only reason we weren't considering, we all knew who he was. I think the reason the 4 of us weren't considering him in the Heisman was because there were other players that were on better teams that are probably going to produce more. I honestly was looking at Bryce Love kind of like Donnell Pumphrey. He's going to do big things, but he's not on a team that's going to be competing for a top 10 spot. And I still think it's that way, but the dude's incredible. Now, I will say, very briefly, he had X amount of yards last week. It was over 250. It was over 300 yards, wasn't it?
Yep, 301 total yards.
301 total yards.
Breaking Christian McCaffrey's single game record.
Yeah, breaking McCaffrey's record. I thought it was like 330 or something, but I was going to play it safe. So he rushes for over 300 yards. I think it's safe to say a majority of those yards were on 5 carries. I don't know what his average was back at that game, as BK I know is going to look at that right now. His average is good, but I want to see every single rush one by one listed out, and I want to see how many yards they went for, because that's why I was impressed with ASU's defense, even though they let him run all over them, was because there was a majority of carries where he lost yardage, like a handful of them, and a lot of them he got back to the line of scrimmage. So I'll give ASU props for that. But bottom line, Bryce Love's a stud, and he's going to continue being a stud.
Throughout the season, he's averaged 10.8 yards per carry.
That's
I just lost my voice when I said that.
That's okay. I lost my voice a few days ago. That's a first down every time you touch the ball. If I'm looking at anybody else, I think Rudolph's still going to compete. I think Lamar Jackson's still going to compete. You give Darnold one really good game against Oregon State and watch, he's probably in someone's top 5 Heisman next week if he goes off against Oregon State. That's just how it is until you hit like week 7 or 8. So I'm not writing anybody off just yet, but right now I've got a front runner and somebody else who needs attention.
Well, the 4 players Josh touched on are the 4 that I have 1 through 4 right now. To make it clear, I think it's Saquon and everybody else right now. Saquon Barkley, I know Bryce Love's been really, really good. I know he's averaging almost 11 yards a carry like Brady talked about. But Saquon Barkley, man, he has been absolutely dominant. Penn State would be nowhere near where they're at right now if not for Saquon Barkley. And then I have Bryce Love. The 2 quarterbacks who I'm probably the highest on are Mason Rudolph and Lamar Jackson. I know I didn't really give Lamar Jackson the credit he deserved a couple weeks ago, but he really has put together a good 2017 season so far. If you actually look at his numbers, I think he's doing better than he did last year as of right now, which is pretty unbelievable to think about. But then my 2 kind of outside looking in players right now. One's Luke Falk, and he's a guy I talked about being a sleeper at the beginning of the year. I know he didn't play a great game on Friday against USC. He did throw for 350 yards, but his QBR wasn't that high. So I know he's been streaky at times, but his team is 5-0. So I have Luke Falk on the outside looking in, and then I have Rashad Penny too, who's a guy we've talked about a couple different times, but he's filled Donnell Pumphrey's shoes by all means and more. The guy's he's a huge reason that San Diego State's in the top 25. He's the big reason why they're 5-0. So those are kind of my 5 to 6 players I'm looking at right now for the Heisman.
Lyle, so far Lamar is on track to do better than he did last year. Obviously, only 5 games into this. Have they played 4 or 5?
5
games.
5 games into the season. He's thrown already for over 1,500 yards, multiple touchdowns. I mean, his passing rating is 159.4. You're not going to... that's obviously mid-season, but that's the top of the top. My Heisman guys, I think Josh nailed it on the head. Saquon Barkley, Bryce Love, because, 5 games into the season, he has over 1,000 rushing yards, where there are guys who don't get that in their entire season. He's got it 5 games into it. And then I'm going to throw Baker Mayfield up there just because he's not out. Because the way he plays it's not traditional. It's because he's a bigger quarterback. He has the ability to get out of the pocket and get the ball downfield with he really reminds me a lot of like an Aaron Rodgers style player, where he's able to get the ball out in just the most random windows and just find the holes downfield. So that's one of the main reasons I throw him up there, because I think he's one of the most NFL-ready quarterbacks. I wouldn't think he's the best right now, but I think he's the most NFL-ready, and that should be into consideration.
I'm with you guys. Barkley number 1, but I did make a top 5 just because I'm like that. But I want to throw some stats out there for you guys. So Saquon Barkley, about 600 rushing yards, 4 TDs, 27 catches for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, a kick return touchdown, and a passing touchdown, which we saw this past week, so we can do it all. I like what Brady said. I do have Baker Mayfield. I actually have him at 2, mainly because 1, he has 13 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he's throwing nearly 75% completion percentage, which is truly unreal. Luke Falk at 3. As Lyle mentioned, he didn't have the best game, even though he did throw for 350 yards, I think he said, against USC. He has nearly 1,800 yards, another 75% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns. And then Rashad Penny, this is one I want to touch up on. For San Diego State, he is absolutely tearing it up. We saw it firsthand when he did to the Sun Devils. He has nearly 1,000 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, a kick return touchdown. And Bryce Love. The only reason I don't have Bryce Love at either 2 or 3 is because Stanford does already have 2 losses. If Stanford can somehow win out and maybe finish with 2 or 3 losses, this guy will without a doubt be in New York for the Heisman finale. But you hate to see it, because if Stanford loses 2 or 3 more games, most likely, at least I don't think he's going to find himself there just because of his team's record. But those are definitely the players. But yeah, interesting though how, like I said, Lamar Jackson, better stats than last year at this point, not getting that much love. And then got the Mason Rudolphs, the Sam Darnold. So as you mentioned, anything can happen. But Brady, I'm sorry to say, with 5 or 6 weeks down the line, you said the Heisman has been determined through the first 6 weeks. So according now, it is Saquon Barkley's. It is Saquon Barkley's. But all right, guys, it is time now for the Q&A. So Brady, let's get those questions up. Sadly, no callers this week. We did have a lot of requests, but we want to get some more of the YouTube questions this week. But let's get things underway.
First question, we touched on this a little bit, and we really didn't talk about it a whole lot, the severity of this. Does Oregon make a bowl game if Herbert doesn't return before the end of a season with a broken collarbone?
No way. Royce Freeman and Justin Herbert are the focal point of that team. Without them, they're not going anywhere.
No chance.
Well, I think they can make a bowl game. Don't they have what, 3 they currently have what, 3 wins, I think? I think they're 4-1 right now. So what you're saying is they would have to go essentially 1-7 the rest of the way, or 1-6. And I don't think they're going to go 1-6 the rest of the way. They got some good games coming up that they can easily win. They're not going to pull an ASU. They got Oregon State, that's a win. They got UCLA, that's a win. They got Arizona, that could be a win. Utah, that could be a win. So I think Oregon, they're definitely not going to finish strong like a lot of people hoped, but they're going to make a bowl game. They'll finish with about 7 or 8 wins.
But think about it. There are still a few games on that schedule where if you don't have Royce Freeman or Justin Herbert, there are teams that still have playmakers that can go off. Like, as you know, I don't want to say I'm anti-Josh Rosen, but if we're looking at the quarterback battle in LA, there's definitely one.
You're not anti-Josh Rosen?
I'm anti-Josh Rosen for Heisman #1 overall pick, top 5 IQ of all time, Blake. Anyway, as I was saying, Josh Rosen's still a pretty skillful quarterback. All it takes is a few Josh
We are
Rosen.
recording this, right, Brady? Okay, great. Just want to make sure we have this on audio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
let-
Josh Rosen, top 5 IQ, Blake.
Let him speak his opinion.
Yeah.
We don't do this to you. Let him do it.
That's true. There are still Josh Rosen touchdown passes that are going to make a difference against Oregon because Josh Rosen's a pocket passer. If he can throw the ball and stay alive in the pocket against an Oregon defense that isn't great, he can tear him up just like Steven Montez can tear him up. Luke Falk's going to tear him up. Jake Browning can tear him up. Like, I just don't think Oregon has what it takes.
They don't have all the pieces, but one thing they do have, Tony Brooks-James, their backup running back. We saw last year he had a breakout second half of the season. This year he's been obviously the man behind Royce Freeman, but he's got 75 rushing yards on the season. He's got no rushing touchdowns, but it is a receiving touchdown. He's 115 receptions on receiving yards on only 7 catches. So he's one of those guys that could be there in need of Royce Freeman and Herbert, but he's not going to be the one guy who can take over a game. He's a good piece, but I don't think he'll be enough. I think if they do make a bowl, they'll be at 6 wins and no more. All right, next question is Jacob Eason or Jake Fromm. Who would you rather have as your starting quarterback?
Jake Fromm.
Purely because of his Twitter name?
Partially, but I think the dude's a baller.
I mean, I know Eason was the number 1 quarterback in his class coming in, and I know he was named the starter coming into the season, but the fact is he got hurt, and Jake Fromm simply beat him out, so I got to go with Jake Fromm.
I'd go with Jake Fromm as well because of how hot he has been. He's definitely hotter than I thought he'd be. But Jacob Eason, now this is a very good one you want to talk about. He is going to be a hot commodity come this college football offseason. He is going to be a player that is going to be coveted by a lot of teams. I remember we were joking that ASU is probably going to go after him and get him and have him be their like 4th string quarterback, but that'll definitely be easy to see because I believe Jake Fromm, is he a true freshman?
Yes. And Jake Eason's a true sophomore.
So I mean,
they can burn his redshirt year, and he's still got 2 years left.
It's going to be definitely interesting to see, but I would go with Fromm at the moment.
I'm going to go with Fromm as well. I think he's proven enough to start at Georgia as a freshman. Thoughts on the ASU-Stanford game?
Here's what we knew going into the game. Bryce Love was good. Manny Wilkins isn't a bad quarterback. ASU's defense it's a roller coaster ride trying to watch it. And ASU's offense can put up points. We know all of those same things after the game. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. ASU put up a good fight. They just weren't the better team. So I got no complaints.
They played well. I mean, we talked about if ASU can't stop Bryce Love in the run game, then it's going to be a tough day for him, which it was. They put up a good fight. I don't think they're going to lose every game for the rest of the season anymore. I think they have a shot to make a bowl game, but it was impressive what they did against a high-powered running game and a running back like Bryce Love, and we'll see how a bye week can help ASU next week as they get healthy, maybe get John Humphrey back and some of these other players.
It was really interesting watching the offensive play calling for Stanford because I don't think I've ever seen an offense run an inside pitch. And that's because they had the quarterback under center and they're running back in an I formation behind him, and he'd take the ball and turn and just throw it at Bryce Love.
They did that a lot.
And it was an actual inside pitch. Normally when you pitch the ball, you go outside the tackles. This one was intended to go in between the tackles.
And
so
last week, Lyle said he thought ASU should run inside pitches.
That'd be a great call. I don't know
why
why
he said that they would blaze right through Stanford. And unfortunately, they didn't call that.
But the thing is, I don't know why you would get rid of the inside pitch if you have the ability to. Like, if you have the ability to do inside pitch and it's working and it's succeeding, I don't know why the hell you would take away the inside pitch. It just works too well.
And it's too bad ASU didn't play hotter than we thought because they played so hot against Oregon. They played so well. I really thought they were going to be playing hotter than I thought for the rest of the season, and they still might. It was just a tough loss this past weekend.
And with how much work those ASU players put in, they earned what they got. I thought it was a great game on their part, and I feel like, maybe they should have had a second chance to get some extra plays in there or whatnot, maybe run a few extra calls, but, Arizona State took the L, but they truly were the better team.
Blake, time just ran out. That's what happens. Time just ran out. Sometimes it'll do it to you. You think you're going to get a comeback, but hey, time just runs out.
Well, the good thing is Arizona State does come back in 2 weeks, and they are going to be back, and they are going to be ready, and they are going to put on a hell of a performance. So everyone just get yourself ready for that. But Brady, what question do we have next?
Which non-Power 5 team has the best chance of making a New Year's Six Bowl, SDSU or USF?
San Diego State.
I'm going to go with San Diego State just because of the running game.
I think San Diego State's the better team, but I'm going to go with South Florida, mainly because the rest of their schedule is easier.
I'm going SDSU because they have that marquee win. Do you think Georgia is able to compete with teams like Penn State and Oklahoma now after they beat Tennessee 41-0?
Yes.
They simply don't give up points. Like, you look at them, they've given up 3 points in the last 2 games, and this has been against a ranked Mississippi State team and another SEC opponent in the Tennessee Volunteers. Like, these guys are on an absolute roll right now, and I think it's going to continue. So, yes, I think they do compete.
I agree. I think they make a run.
I think they have the ability to. They got all the pieces together, and I think they're going to get a big push at the end of the season. If Saquon keeps putting up performances like this for the rest of the year, does he have a chance to be the best running back in the 21st century?
In the 21st century?
No.
Like, over guys like Reggie Bush and Zeke and some of those guys? I don't think so. He's been really good, and he could be maybe top 10 or top 15, but not the best ever.
I mean, putting him at 1, that's a bold statement, but I think maybe top 5 definite potential.
He definitely has the ability to be up there. I mean, if he keeps up what he's doing, something we've seen a lot recently. I mean, I didn't watch a whole lot of Reggie Bush as a kid. I know, Josh, you did a majority of your childhood because that's when he was there. Times have changed for running backs.
Yeah.
Because Reggie Bush was, you get the ball, you get a toss, you get a handoff, and you run. Now it's, you toss it off to him, what's he going to do? Oh, your running back's going to throw a pass downfield and score a touchdown. It's different times, and it's different things. I think he has the ability to be number 1, but in a different style than previous players. Would Jalen Hurts have a chance to win the Heisman if he didn't get taken out at halftime every single game?
Yeah, I mean, he's good and he puts up pretty good stats, but there are simply better quarterbacks out there. There are better playmakers out there.
Has there been a more underrated player in college football the last 2 years than Jalen Hurts? I mean, this guy's career record is, what, like 20-1?
He's got 1 career loss. But I don't think he's underrated. The guy was in the national championship last year.
Well, I mean, I think this is the first time we've mentioned his name on the entire show this year.
It is an interesting concept, though, because if he didn't get taken out at halftime, he would probably throw close to 300, 400 yards a game and probably a handful of touchdowns as well. Now, he's never going to play the whole game because Alabama blows everybody out by halftime. You look at the game this past weekend, they won 66-3 against Ole Miss. So I guess we'll kind of never know. I think if he did play the whole game, yeah, he'd have a shot.
Through the first 4 games of this year, not including this past week, he's thrown for 550 yards and only 70 attempts. So you look at that, I think the last complete game he played was week 1. Maybe he played another one scattered throughout, but like I said at the beginning of the show, they're not on national TV. So I think if they were, he'd definitely be up there for a Heisman consideration because, I mean, last year as a true freshman leading this Alabama team to the national championship. Original starting quarterback Blake Barnett didn't play so hot. Jumped ship, here at ASU now. But I think Jalen Hurts has the ability to definitely be up there for consideration if they were on a more national spotlight. Yes, they're number 1. Yes, it's Alabama. But Alabama's not known for quarterbacks.
I also think, I totally agree with what you just said, but I think also Alabama, I think, is one of the most complete teams in college football, where they don't need a playmaker to step up, put up ridiculous stats, and lead them, and it's because they're just a complete team. If you go back and you look at top 5 teams with Heisman Trophy winners, you'd have to go back a pretty long way to find someone who was undoubtedly the best player in the country on the best team in the country who won a national championship. And you look back and you see Cam Newton and things like that. But like if you look back at the last few years, I mean, we had like Derrick Henry and you had Mark Ingram coming out of Bama, but I also think they're more of a running team anyway. But if you go back and you look at things, like Lamar Jackson wasn't on the best team in the country. Johnny Manziel wasn't on the best team in the country.
What about Jameis?
And yeah. When Jameis was there too, you have a playmaker. But I also think if you take him off of that, which is why you can't argue that he didn't deserve to be in contention for the Heisman Trophy. But there was also, he's one of the best players in the country. But if you take him off of Florida State's team, they're still a really good team.
I mean, do you remember who was on that team? Devontae Freeman, Kelvin Benjamin. Like, that team was stacked.
Yeah, where if you take Johnny Manziel off of that Texas A&M team a few years ago, that team isn't really anything. If you take Lamar Jackson off of Louisville, that team doesn't exist. And a few years ago, you take Marcus Mariota off of Oregon. Oregon's still a good team, but without Marcus Mariota,
they're not going to be the level they were.
Exactly.
And you kind of look at that this year.
You can make that argument for everyone.
And you look at that this year, why couldn't Florida State do the same thing when Francois went down?
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's Florida State. They're a top team in the country. They should have enough to get there. And they're still one of the worst teams in the country now.
Well, I wouldn't say they're one of the worst, but their offense is struggling. Derwin James can't play offense, so...
No, hey, Jabril Peppers did. I mean, do you throw him over? I mean, do you do something?
He has too much potential to put him on offense.
This one's a pretty simple question. Who's the best kicker in the country?
Brandon Ruiz.
Oh, of course, who Blake doesn't seem to have high
goodness.
praise for.
I was joking on that one, but you guys will never let me hear the end of it. Well, the Chattanooga kicker is currently still active.
That's true.
But really quickly, though, I do want to touch upon this, who I do currently think actively is the best kicker, and that is Matt Gay out of Utah. He's currently 14 for 14 on the season, 5 for 5 on 30 to 39, 2 for 2 on 40 yarders, and 2 for 2 on 50-plus yarders with his long being 56. So currently, at the moment, if you want the best, I know it's hard to believe that there's someone other than Zane or Brandon Ruiz or the Chattanooga kicker that's the best, but some love out there for Matt Gay because 14 of 14, that's impressive.
All right, who's the best punter in the country?
Brandon Heiklin.
Damn right. Do you think one of the top quarterbacks still goes number 1 in the draft, considering how most of them have been playing very poorly in the recent couple of weeks?
I have no clue. We still have a lot of football left to be played, so I think there's a possibility. But I think there's obviously, we could see some defensive players go first overall, but I don't think we see a quarterback taken first overall.
Or an offensive lineman or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we see a quarterback taken first overall.
Because you have to think about who the worst teams currently are, and I think it's the Browns and the Giants who are currently the only winless teams. There might be another one, but the Browns definitely, after picking great old Deshaun Kaiser, he ain't... I don't know.
You're giving him too much of a hard time, I think.
So I don't know how that's
He
going
threw
to
an
go.
interception this past Sunday, but it wasn't even his fault. It went off his receiver's hand.
I see the good old Los Angeles Chargers are currently 0-4, and then, like I said, the Browns are 0-4, and the Giants are 0-4 as well, as well as the 49ers. So maybe the 49ers, if they finish at the bottom, they go with the quarterback, but I don't see any of those teams going with the QB.
Well, to be totally honest, in terms of which quarterback might go first overall or even top 5, I think you look back at Lamar Jackson, and again, I didn't give him the praise he deserved a couple weeks ago, but most NFL scouts are saying he could very easily now be the first quarterback off the board because of his ability to run and his ability to throw the ball downfield.
Now, this is a topic for another show, but really quickly, I don't think Darnold goes. I think
not anymore.
The season
I've been saying this for weeks. I've been saying it since the Rose Bowl that he's not.
So I feel bad for those Jets fans that apparently are traveling to every USC game that have the custom Darnold jersey.
Well, I think he's not going now because he's struggling, and maybe another year under his belt would help him in college. I think if he'd put together another year like he did last year, he would have.
I don't think he would have gone regardless.
We talked about this last year, Josh, and I thought he's most relatable to Andrew Luck in the NFL now, who stayed, who played, who learned, who got better and matured as a quarterback and a person and everything. I think Sam Darnold does the same thing because when you look at him on the sidelines, he's one of the most poised, calm looking people during a football game. Throws a 45-yard touchdown, high fives an offensive lineman, walks off the field. Isn't running around waving his arms, doing celebrations. He's like, all right, get to work. We're done. Let's go. Let's get to the next play. Let's go get the ball back and figure it out. I think he stays, and I think next year, we're a year and a half away. You can't say anything about it, but you never know what's going to happen this year. You never know what's going to happen next year. You never know his thought process, but I think he does stay. All right, guys, last question for us. Which conference is going to be left out of the college football playoffs, and why is it the Pac-12?
I think it's just too early to say. If I had to take a wild guess, I'd say the Big 12 because that's usually who's left out. But we're only 5 weeks in. There's so much that's going to happen over these next 2 months that it's way too early to predict that.
Well, I'm going to say this. If there's going to be any conference that doesn't make it, I think it's going to be the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State is one loss from completely just shattering their season. TCU, I don't think they can sustain it, so I don't think they're going to be there. And Oklahoma, they're sitting there at 3, But come near middle endish of season, if they suffer a loss, they're going to fall to probably 8, 9, or 10, and they're not going to find themselves in the playoff.
That's why it's always better to lose early than lose late.
Yeah, so I think the Pac-12 still has hope with Washington there at 6. You have Wazoo there at 11. Who knows? They can go on some insane run. And then USC, I still think they're sitting there at 14 pretty. So I think Big 12 is the conference that should be on watch.
Respectful. I could go both sides of that. I could see where the Pac-12. I mean, Oklahoma, like Lyle said, better to lose early than lose late. Better to not lose at all. But what are you going to do? I think the Big 12 has the chance to make it with Oklahoma. I think right now the 2 Washington schools for the Pac-12 are the really only hope that the Pac has of getting into that playoff spot. UW sitting at 6, Wazoo is sitting at 11. So I think one of those 2 teams, if a Pac-12 team currently were to make it, it'd be one of those 2.
Well, I think if USC wins out, they still find their way in. And if they win that Pac-12 title game, too.
Yeah, for the Pac-12, it comes down to the Pac-12 championship, assuming both UW and USC haven't lost since then. So I think USC and UW, I still think both of them are going to either a New Year's Six bowl game or the playoff. So...
Well, that does wrap up this week's Q&A. I think there were about 150 questions, so way to go. Great questions. Love hearing them. But guys, Lyle, get off your feet. Go ring those bells because it is officially time for the Pick Ems. But before we do get to the Pick Ems, guys, we do have to talk about our Pick Ems League. If you haven't joined yet, it's never too late. You guys can still make some sort of late push. But guys, whoever gets the most Pick Ems right gets a $25 gift card of their choice. So make sure you come and sign up. Currently, the leaders are between 2 people with 41 points. That is ESPN 421000803.
Oh, I know him. That's my uncle.
Way to go, Uncle Brady. And we got Will Rod 1025. Now, I think it was last week. I was looking in the comment sections, and there were some fans that were getting at it with each other saying that they were coming for first place in the Pick'em. So it's starting to get a little competitive. You like to see it. But speaking of Pick'em scores, guys, we do Pick'ems as well. Josh has something he has to say.
Am I still tied for second?
No.
What am I now?
I think you're tied for third.
I'll take it.
We do have Pick'em scores of our own. Now, guys, a lot happened this past weekend. A huge shakeup in the rankings. Currently in last place with a 29, me. I had a lot of bold predictions last week, and none of them came true. A lot of them were close, though, however, but stranger things have happened, except this past weekend. In third place, we have Brady with 33. In second place with 35 is Josh. And in first place, once again, with the biggest smile on his face, is Lyle with 36. Just a repick of last year. So hopefully this is the week that gets things turned around. We'll have to wait and see. But guys, the first game of the week, number 17 Louisville at number 24 NC State.
Louisville goes in and they get the win. I think it's going to be close for 3 quarters until Lamar Jackson happens.
Lamar Jackson's been on fire over the last couple weeks. I got to go with Louisville.
I'm going to take Action Jackson. We'll go with Lamar. I don't know why I just called him that, but I did.
I like that nickname.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Action Jackson. I'm going to say pretty much Josh got it again. You close for the first 3 quarters, but then Louisville's going to come in, finish the 4th, and win the game.
At the beginning of the year, I was very high on NC State. They had a first week loss to South Carolina, but since then they've bounced back. They've looked good. I'm going to go with the Wolfpack in this one, guys, at home.
Didn't Herb Street pick them in his top 4 to start the year?
Who knows? Maybe he did.
You're trying to lose this competition.
Nope.
Lyle, you also remember Herb Street's known for taking crazy ballsy picks.
No,
like he
I
had
know.
ASU a couple years ago saying, they're going to finish in the playoff and Mike Bercovici could win the Heisman.
You got to put something on the line for these pick'ems to make them exciting.
It's like I said, Wilton Spates
Really?
could win the
Because
Heisman.
I'm just looking toward the end of the year when I get to brag about being the 2-time Harris Highlights Pick'em champion.
He's in the lead for 1 week. And
You're
he's
talking a lot of
trash.
smack there, Lyle. You're talking a lot of smack. But guys, the next game of the week, this is where College Game Day is going to be headed. Fort Worth, Texas. Number 23, West Virginia at number 8, TCU.
TCU gets it done. I think bottom line, they're the better team. West Virginia could catch them off guard, but the fact that this game is in Fort Worth, I think means the Horned Frogs take it.
It'll be a good quarterback matchup. A couple of forgotten, underrated quarterbacks in this game between Kenny Hill and Will Grier, 2 transfers who had high promise at their original schools. It'll be a good matchup, but I like TCU pulling away late in this game.
I'm going to go Kenny Trill in this game. I'm going to go TCU.
Will Grier has been a very under-the-radar player this year. He's putting up amazing stats, but I am going to go with TCU on this one. I do think that it's going to be a great game. We got number 13, Miami, Florida at Florida State.
Oh, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I think it's the week Florida State gets the win. I think Florida State somehow, some way, gets their big win this week against the Hurricanes.
I don't know. I've been pretty impressed with the way Miami's been playing, so I'm going to go with the Hurricanes.
I already regret this. I just want.
I was watching ESPN the other day, and it was a replay of the U 30 for 30. So I'm going with the U. Let's go Miami.
You know, there's a reason that a lot of people had Florida State winning, you know, the national title this year, coming in the top 4 for the college football playoff. Now, losing Jean-Andre Francois obviously hurts. But this team, everyone's acting as if they're a horrible team. Now, granted, I was not high on them at all last week. I had Wake Forest beating them. But they are at home. I'm not as high on Miami as Lyle is. I'm going to make Josh feel a little better about himself. I'm going to go with the U. I'm completely kidding. I'm going to go with Florida State this week, guys. Now, here's an interesting matchup, an SEC game. LSU at number 21 Florida.
All right, so LSU on the road at Florida. This is a battle of 2 subpar quarterbacks, maybe 3, because I don't know what Florida's doing at quarterback. They're getting wins. They're doing it one way or another, so hats off to them. They're making do with what they have, which I still don't think is a very good core of quarterbacks, but they're winning football games. This game is in the swamp. There's no way the Gators lose this game.
See, this is usually a game that I'd be excited to watch. It's usually 2 high-powered SEC schools, but man, have both teams just kind of underperformed. I mean, Florida obviously had that Hail Mary that got them the extra win, but Luke Del Rio's now out for the year. They're probably going to go back to Franks. I still think they should go with Malik Zaire, but, you know, he didn't exactly show himself in the chance he got. But I'm going to go with Florida in this game. We're not sure if Geis is going to play this week for LSU, and like Josh said, Florida finds a way to get wins.
This is going to be my one upset of the week. I'm just going to go LSU because why the hell not?
Oh, good reasoning.
I mean, both of these teams are just letdowns. Not gonna lie, I could care less about this game. I'm not gonna watch a single second of it. I think the final score is gonna be like 17-14. Gonna be not exciting. I think Florida gets it done, but who even cares?
Watch, you say that, it's going to end up being the highest scoring game in college football history.
If it's the highest scoring game of the weekend, I'm gonna let a caller call in and get to host the show next week. We got Minnesota at Purdue.
This is an interesting game because I thought Minnesota was going to be really good last week against the Terps. Maryland proved me wrong. They got the win. I was impressed. I think Purdue gets this game at home. These are both very mediocre teams, but I think Purdue gets it done at home. I think they hit the Gophers in the mouth and come out with a win.
I think this game's going to be very close. Like Josh said, it's 2 kind of middle-of-the-pack Big Ten teams, but I'm going to take Minnesota in this game.
You know, I never thought I'd say this in my life, but Purdue, they've been playing good football. Not great. They're 2 and... I think they won this past weekend. They're 2-3, whatever it is. Jeff Brom came in. He turned this program around. New athletic director came in, turned the program around. David Blow's been there as their quarterback for a couple years. He finally has a decent coach around him. He has a good offensive coordinator. I never thought I'd say this in my life, but boiler up. I'm going to go with Purdue in this game at home, up at Ross-Ade Stadium.
I'm going to row the boat and go with the Gophers on this one. Maryland at number 10, Ohio State.
Maryland will hang with them for 2 quarters, but I think the Buckeyes pull it out in the second half.
I'm not super high on Ohio State this year, but when it comes down to it, they are the better team. I've got the Buckeyes.
Ohio State's going to come out. They're going to be sluggish for the first quarter. Maryland will be there, but I think they're going to shell out in this game, and Ohio State will win this one.
You guys have no idea how badly I want to pick Maryland in this game. I think they're going to hang with them, as Josh said. It might take a little last-second effort for Ohio State to get it done. I am going to go with Ohio State just to be safe, but this for the weekend is going to be my sleeper pick, the one upset looming game that can definitely happen. Here's an interesting one just to be fun. Colorado State and Utah State.
Colorado State, no doubt. I don't think the Rams are a bad team. They get the win on the road against the Aggies.
Man, this isn't quite a worst of the worst game, but it's a game I look at and it's like, Blake, why'd you put this one on here? No offense. But you know what? It's going to be a toss-up. Bobby Wagner, shout out to you, buddy. This is for you, Utah State.
You know, shout out Robert Turbin, also going to
Robert
Utah
Turbin.
State.
He went to Utah State,
and
too.
also got drafted in the same year to the same team. Pretty cool story. Seahawks.
And now he's on the Colts.
He's on the Colts, yeah. I'm going to go Utah State because we haven't heard anything from BYU in a couple weeks, and I feel like we need some Utah in our life. And BYU, by the way, they're allowed to have caffeine on campus now. Good for them.
Wow.
It's going to be the most lit weekend at BYU since, well, ever. I'm going to go with Colorado State as well because they have lost to Alabama and Colorado. They put up a fight in both those games. Utah State, not my favorite school in Utah, not even my top 3, so I'm going to go with Colorado State on that one. SMU at Houston.
Houston. That's it.
I like Houston in this game. I know SMU's played some decent football, but I got to go with Houston.
Houston.
SMU. Cortland Sutton, if you don't know the name, look at it now. He's going to be one of the top receivers in next year's draft. This guy can ball. SMU, they only have 1 loss on the year, and they're a very good team that's very underrated. I think they crack the top 25 next week after this win. Kansas State at Texas.
Texas comes out of this game with a win. It's in Austin. Texas is looking like a better football team. I think they pull this one out at home.
I think the fact that it's in Austin makes it that much tougher for Kansas State. I'm going to go Texas.
You know, I was going to prepare a whole speech about colors and why purple isn't, or orange is inferior to purple. I don't really care. I'm going Texas.
I'm going to go with Kansas State on this one. Texas did not look that good past week. Kansas State, we see them. They've been ranked this year. I think they're a very good team, and I think they're going to go in and get this job done. I'm still not that impressed with Texas, although their defense has looked very good. Now, we do have the #1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. Who gets this job done?
Alabama gets it done. They're the #1 team in the country. They blow out everybody. The SEC is not a good football conference. They are top heavy, and they are top heavy as hell. They got a few good teams, and Bama is what's holding this conference up right now, in my opinion. I think Alabama kills them. I don't think A&M's a very good team, and I think Bama is a really good team.
I mean, let's be honest. Unless Alabama's playing a team in the top 10, who don't they blow out? Alabama's going to take this game, I say, by 3 touchdowns at least.
I think this is Alabama's closest game of the year. And that's because Kyle Field is one of the toughest places to play. They are always rocking there in Aggie land. And I don't think A&M wins, but I think it's Alabama's closest game of the year.
Yeah, I like what Brady said. I think this game is definitely going to be closer than a lot of people think, but it's Alabama. You always got to go with them, so roll Tide. Michigan State at #7 Michigan.
The Big House is a tough place to play. Michigan State's not a very good team. Michigan's going to get a win. It's going to be a close game because Michigan's offense isn't one to put up 1,000 points in a game like Alabama's will, even against inferior teams. Michigan State will keep it close for the first half, and when I say keep it close, I mean tie game, maybe a 3-point ball game. Michigan will pull away second half, and by pull away, I mean like a touchdown or 10 points. It's still going to be a close game, but bottom line, I think Michigan, the Wolverines, outplay them.
You guys have to remember, this is a big rivalry game too, Michigan State. I don't think either team is that impressive, although Michigan clearly is the better team. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but because it's at the Big House, because the Wolverines find ways to get wins every week, I'm going to go with Michigan.
Now that my Heisman sleeper, Wilton Spate, is hurt.
Oh yeah, they have John O'Corn playing now. I forgot about that.
My boy O'Corn's going to step up. Do I know anything about him? No. Do I care? No. It's Michigan State. It doesn't matter how good or bad these teams are. It's always a good game because, like Lyle said, it's a big rivalry. And it's great to have it in the middle of the season. But I think Michigan in the Big House gets it done easily.
Well, this is the first matchup between Michigan and Michigan State since
Trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
Sean McDonough, what a guy.
I also feel like low-key, that has to be probably one of like the at least top 10 calls of the 21st century, but one of the best in all of college football that goes very under the radar because, as I think Josh mentioned this, it's just so pure and natural. You hear his voice just cracking like crazy, but this is the first time they've played since that, well, at the Big House since that play. Wilton Spate is out, and as you guys know, I'm not that high on Michigan. Michigan State has looked good this year. Their only loss is to Notre Dame, so I'm not going to hurt them too much for that one. I think Michigan State gets this one done, guys. I think they go into the Big House, and they come out on top with the win. Now, are they going to win the way they did last time? I hope so. I think that'd be pretty awesome, but we're going to have to wait and see.
More views for you and your channel because you're going to make a video about it.
Yay! And now, guys, we go to the worst of the worst, the absolute worst game of the week, the game you cannot pay us to watch, the game you cannot pay us to attend, and that is between Tulsa and Tulane. Guys, who wins this game?
My uncle lives up north just past Sacramento, and he lives on a lake. And we used to go getting, like, rafting, and we used to do, like, bodyboarding or whatever it's called, kneeboarding. We used to do all these different things, wakeboarding. It was a lot of fun. And when you would fall off, you would fall into the lake. And then when the boat would swing back around to pick you up, you would get hit by a big green wave. And for that reason, I'm taking the Tulane green wave to take down the Tulsa Golden Hurricane.
Man, I don't know how to follow that up other than with the incredible hours of preparation I, of course, put into this game. I don't think I have a story for either of these schools, to be honest. They're just both so boring. Like I said, you couldn't pay me to turn on this game. I'm going to go with, you know what? Tulsa has more, you know what? I don't even know. Josh picked Tulane. I'm going to go against them to try to get a point. Tulsa.
Were you going to say Tulsa has more letters?
No.
Okay, I thought you were. Well, this is a battle of the teams who have colorful mascots that don't end in S. The Green Wave and the Golden Hurricane.
Ooh.
Yeah. Neither of which end in S. One of the few teams in college that don't end in S. But I was going to go with where I said about Lyle. Tulsa Golden Hurricane has more letters. Therefore, they thought about it longer.
That's not what I was going to say.
Therefore, I'm going to go with Tulsa, because why not?
I like baseball, and I like the Dodgers. The Dodgers' double A team are the Tulsa Drillers. For that very reason, I'm going to go with Tulsa on this one.
The Tulsa Drillers?
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
Every minor league baseball team has a cool name. But guys, unfortunately, there is no Arizona State football game this upcoming week. So the good thing is, we can't lose this weekend.
Yeah.
If there's any bright side, we do play bye, so I don't know, I'm going to have to look them up, see how well they are. But
BYE.
BYE, so
Blake's third favorite school in.
Brigham Young, Enterprise, I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, no Arizona State game this week, so unfortunately we can't pick them to lose this week. We'll make sure we do that next week when they play
All three of you picked them to win last week.
When they play, yeah, that is very true. When they play UW next week, so sadly, no Arizona State pick 'em this week. So that does unfortunately wrap up our show.
That doesn't mean we're not going to football games, though, because I am going to the Eastern Washington UC Davis game. Come on.
Hey. I'm going to the IU Charleston Southern game. Oh yeah.
So
What are you doing, Lyle?
Yeah, Lyle, what game are you going to this weekend?
My high school's rivalry game.
Me too.
Man,
Okay,
did-
actually, that sounds kind of cool.
And
No.
I'm also going to the Colts game.
means he
Go Colts.
definitely peaked in high school. Merch. If you are interested in owning some Harris Highlights merchandise, well, today is your lucky day. Pick up your own Don't Sleep on Chattanooga, Zane for Heisman, and official Harris Highlights merch today. Actually, after this episode ends, I'm going to be heading over to the shop and purchasing a t-shirt for my dad. His birthday's come up in a few weeks, so hopefully he didn't watch this far into the show, and I'm spoiling his birthday present. So
Happy
Dad-
birthday, Mark.
So,
Happy birthday, Mark.
Yeah, so,
Hi, Mark.
so Dad, if you're listening to this, well, I guess you know what you're getting for your birthday in a few weeks. Also, guys, head on over to SeatGeek, get that $20 off. Everyone's doing it. Don't be that one guy that doesn't do it. Save money, live better, Walmart. Once again, next week we're going to be giving away that Pro Football Focus subscription, so make sure you check it out to make sure if you have one.
Also, real quick, special thanks to SeatGeek. I bought some Colts tickets for this weekend, so I'm going to watch the Colts probably lose to the 49ers.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you like us on Facebook. We are trying to get more involved there. Also, if all of you guys have Twitters, well, go on, follow me, go follow Brady, go follow Josh, and go follow Lyle, because we got to get those follower numbers up. But guys, once again, thank you so much for watching. We are on SoundCloud. I know Lyle said people don't like listening on SoundCloud, but that is incorrect. People do like SoundCloud. I get questions saying, why isn't the show on SoundCloud? So there you go.
I said YouTube is more popular, which is true, and Mr. Joseph Camparelli confirmed that for us today.
Very
knows
true.
Who that is.
He's a
him
photographer
up.
for USA
He's
Today. He's a
awesome.
very good photographer.
The greatest teacher of all time, but for Lyle Goldstein, Josh Schaefer, Brady Klain, and this has been Blake Harris from this very beautiful new studio that we got here in downtown Phoenix.
It's scenic.
It's very beautiful. We're an upgrade studio. I wouldn't ask for anything else, but we'll see you guys next week and go enjoy some college football.
Go Ags!